Okay, so here we are at chapter 10 of Dragonwings. Chapter 9 was pretty exciting. We had the earthquake that happened, the San Francisco earthquake, which you guys had learned about before we read the book. So, chapter 10 is going to take place over the course of 2 months' time from April to May in 1906. And it's them. You'll find out them just kind of dealing with this disaster, this tragedy that's occurred in their lives, and just kind of showcasing how I want you to keep track of how the two communities, the Tang community versus the demon community, how each of them deals with the tragedy that's occurred. So those are some things I want you to keep track of in your inner voice as you read. The demons we passed had the strangest looks on their faces too. Once they had been rich and wealthy, and now all they owned were the clothes on their backs and their lives, and they were in danger of losing those too. They looked shocked, as if not quite believing that all of this could happen to them. I could not help remembering what fine houses and mansions had once been there, and what richly dressed demons had eaten and drunk within them. And now they were all gone in less than a minute. The demons we met would have been grateful now for a crust of bread or a cup of water, things they would have turned their backs on just 12 hours ago. I felt very small. So I annotated or marked my inner voice here like small how? Does he mean physically small or more metaphorically or figuratively? As we walked up the now deserted streets, Lefty warned us to watch out for demon soldiers. They shoot anybody they find because they assume that the person is a looter, but the soldiers are looters themselves. When I was coming here, I saw them drive one family out of their house, and the owners were no sooner out of sight than they broke in and stole everything in sight. So a looter is somebody who goes and breaks in to like a business or a house or a residence of some kind and steals things. Usually looting happens in like a time of crisis or tragedy. So like after a natural disaster, or perhaps during a pandemic or some sort of apocalyptic event. Sometimes you see it in books and movies where there's kind of some sort of major apocalyptic crisis happening. But the demon soldiers we met were not good to us, Father said. They told us about the demon soldiers we met were good to us, Father said. They told us about the wagon. That was because you had a demoness with you, Lefty grinned. From now on, trust to your feet and not to your good fortune. Once down the hill, we saw figures in khaki uniforms moving about. Lefty motioned us away, and we eased back to the top of the hill where we would be out of sight. Then we hid behind a mound of rubble that had once been a house. We spent an anxious half hour there. From down the hill, we heard the sound of breaking glass and rough, coarse laughter, and then 6 demon soldiers walked by, their blanket rolls bulging with loot, valuables tucked into their belts. I want you guys to think about if you were in that situation. These are soldiers who are supposed to be helping you after a crisis, but instead they're going about and stealing people's valuables and obviously not helping them. So that's got to be pretty scary for not just our main characters, but anybody living through this tragedy. One demon even had a bushel basket full of trinkets. Their bayoneted rifles were slung over their shoulders, and their very red faces made me think they had been drinking stolen liquor. They were puffing away on fat cigars. I supposed the cigars were stolen too. It was kind of scary. One day we were living in a law-abiding community, and the next day the city and the community had both dissolved, with every person for himself. And I marked my inner voice here on the side, meaning like, how would you feel if you were in this situation? I know if I was Moonshadow or Windrider or even Miss Whitlaw or Robin, I'd be super scared. It struck me that Father and I had probably walked by this house feeling as safe as we could feel in a demon street many times, and now here we were hiding behind what was left of it, trying to keep from getting shot. It was about 4 p.m. when we got to the Tang people's town. The streets were pretty empty. There were more mounds of rubble where some houses had been. Others had lost their fronts or sides, revealing their insides like gutted animals. That's some pretty good figurative language there. The author's giving us a really nice visual of what the Chinatown community is looking like after the earthquake. Rats skittered over the rubble, blinking evil red eyes at the harsh sunlight. It felt eerie being in the almost empty streets, for they always hustled and bustled with life at this time of day. Now, except for 1 or 2 scurrying people, we saw no one. Our own company building had stood up through the quake. The founder had been careful to select a sturdy building that had good wind and water vibrations, a phrase that meant it was in harmony with the rest of the universe. And I annotated that in my inner voice as some sort of cultural connection, again, to the Tang community. Uncle was standing in the door, a pistol in his hands. One of his sleeves was torn, and there was a cut over his eye, but otherwise, he was as unchanged as the building. Well, it's as they say, fools and children have all the luck, he said, but he looked relieved to see us. So no dragons got you. Father stopped. And no dragon would dare shake your house, old man. Humph, Uncle turned to me. You thirsty, boy? Yes, but do you have water? No, Lefty laughed. Only his excellent and venerable collection of wines. Uncle sighed, and I think the earth shaking has so disturbed the wines that they'll turn bad. We've been drinking since this morning, Lefty said. Better save some of that, Father said. It'll be worth more than gold. That's where Handclap and White Deer are, seeing it's put away where it'll be safe in the park. We moved inside the company building. It was cool and refreshing there in the shadows. The ironing shelves had been taken down along with everything else. The only things left were the stove and Uncle's prize chair, looking lonely and forlorn in the center of the empty room. Uncle sat down in it heavily, the pistol still in his hand. He looked even more immovable than the stove or the building. All of us sat down around him on the floor. It was strange to see the air unclouded with steam and not to hear the sound of washing from the back. You must have a mound of stuff in the park, Father said. No, just the necessities, Uncle shrugged. Most of it is in Oakland. That's the city across the bay from San Francisco. How did you get it over there? Father asked. On a classmate's boat, Uncle said simply. Superior men help one another in time of need. I wish when I had first read this, I had marked that as potential theme. I think that's an awesome, awesome thematic statement. So maybe mark that in your book. We finished the packing while Uncle supervised us, and by the time we had the last wagon load ready, Handclap had come back. Red Rabbit immediately looked for some sugar in my pants pocket, but he had to be satisfied with my promise of some in the future. It had been funny to see Red Rabbit moving speedily, for him, up the street, for like us, he did not enjoy being around the rats much. We stopped loading for a moment to listen to the crump, crump, crump of cannon. Okay, I'm going to pause there. You guys are going to finish reading and marking chapter 10. You're going to summarize chapter 10, and then you have a journal entry that asks about the rebuilding and the differences between how the Tang people and the demons rebuild. There will also be a class Zoom today at 11 o'clock to discuss what we've read so far. The link is posted in our class stream. So see you all then.